Hi everyone, welcome back to JP WHU TV. It's nice to see you. I hope you're keeping well. Thank you to everybody that's subscribed over the last few days. It's been phenomenal. We're at 2,404, so thank you very, very much. If you're enjoying what we're doing, by all means, please do like, share and subscribe. As always, put your comments in the live chat. Let me know what you're thinking. But basically today what we're going to do is we're going to have a guest on. As you guys know, we've been doing this since the start of the season, where we have a guest on to talk about the game itself. But before we go into that, what I do need to do, of course, guys, is first of all say that this live stream is sponsored by the channel sponsor 3retro.com. Please click the link in the description below that will take you directly through to the West Ham section of their website, where you can purchase some really nice retro gear, guys, as you can see from the icon that's up here, along with Admiral and Umbro track jackets, polo shirts, sweatshirts and t-shirts, so go check those out. Any purchases you make through the link in the description below, the commission that the channel would normally be getting, as I always say, I'll be sending directly onto the charity Iron Supporting Food Banks. They're based in the Newham area, and they're helping those in the Newham area and the Essex County and further afield for that matter to help put food. I can never say this properly. This is why so many bloody takes get taken of the bloody previews. To help put food on the table for those that are less fortunate than you and I, guys. So go grab yourself a really nice retro shirt. You'll be saving yourself a few quid in comparison to the club shop, and you'll be helping those that are less fortunate than you and I. Now, our guest on today is a former content creator for Forged from Irons. Now, obviously, Duke's put his video up and he's put his side of it, and that's great. So, guys, for anybody that's watching it, do not mention that in any shape or form. This is purely a hammer-to-hammer conversation. So, guys, just without further ado, we'll welcome on Gatesy. How you doing, mate?
I'm all good, mate. How are you?
Very well. Sweating like crazy. This evening's getting very hot for some random reason. It's the start of September. We're almost in the sunset, and it's bloody 23 degrees. Why couldn't it have been like this a few weeks ago, mate? Honestly, when we were having that little relatively, that mild snap at the start of middle of August. Anyway, man, it's ridiculous. So, but yeah, it's good to see you. It's been a while since I've spoken to you, fella. Obviously, last time I was last time I was on was with you guys doing actually very, very similar. We're just having a conversation about a few things for West Ham that had happened in the week. But obviously with the transfer window closing first and foremost, mate, guys, if you haven't already done so, I've done two videos that went up yesterday and one went up today, talking about the summer sales and the summer buys. Gacy, what were your thoughts on the transfer window, mate, overall?
In terms of the business that we did, I think maybe it would have been quite handy to get a striker in, to be perfectly honest. I mean, the signing of Kudus, I mean, he can play up front. I think he's more a wide player, really. But there's obviously this thing in the background of, are we possibly going to go and give a contract to Jesse Lingard? Is that going to be our strategy, sort of, as far as an offensive player is concerned? I don't know. I mean, other than that, I mean, it was quite frustrating for a lot of the transfer window as sort of like it wound on, and there was lots of other teams doing business, and we were sort of quite slow out of the gate. But it was, I think overall, I think it was a half decent window. I mean, I think Alvarez has looked a really good bit of business as far as I'm concerned. And I was a massive Declan Rice fan, but I do think that he looks, I just think that we look a much more balanced team on the basis of the evidence that I've looked at so far this season, which obviously is a fairly small sample size, I grant you.
Well,
but
yeah, we're only just over a tenth of the way through the season.
Yeah, so I mean, it's, you haven't got much to go on, but I mean, on the basis of what I think what we've seen in front of us, I think that having Ward-Prowse and Alvarez in the middle of the park pulling the strings and giving a little bit of defensive solidity and dead ball, that sort of aspect of things, I think we look a much better outfit, in my opinion. I think that we look more balanced. I think we look more like a cohesive unit. I do wonder how much of the fact that Declan Rice, probably everybody knew that he was going to be off in the summer, and so it proved. I do wonder how much of an impact that had on the other players, the staff, all the rest of it. And I think that in a funny way, I think Jared Bowen might have kind of let the cat out of the bag after the Brighton game, because I remember he was interviewed and he said about, we went away from what worked for us and we then sort of had to go back to it latterly. And I sort of think that part of that was possibly a little bit of David Moyes maybe trying to pander to Declan Rice to try and keep him happy. But it didn't work out. And obviously, when we started going back to what served us so well in the previous seasons, a team that's relinquishes a fair amount of possession most of the time, but plays on the counter and creates a lot of chances in the limited possession that we have, and is effective with creating and converting those chances. I think that when we went back to that and what we've played so far this season, I think we've looked like a much better unit.
Yeah, no, it's not a bad comparison in any shape or form, mate. I mean, as you remember, 2 seasons ago, how we were playing now was exactly as it was then, and then all of a sudden, Rice wanted to seem to bomb up a bit further up the pitch, and that seemed to screw us up, which obviously shows how bad of a defensive midfielder Thomas Souček is. As great as I love him, I think he's a great player. He's certainly a box to box. I'd class him as a midfielder myself rather than an actual defensive midfielder. But yeah, Alvarez is looking superb. It's crazy to think that was his only second full length game, making his debut against Chelsea. He looks. Moyes really seems to trust him because he seems to be the only defensive midfielder. It looks like we were on a 4-1-4-1 formation, especially the last couple of games against Brighton, and then obviously the game we're talking about Friday night. So let's talk about the team sheet. It was quite obvious. I mean, I called it 100% in the preview. The formation, not so much, but the previous, Areola in goal, Soufal, Zuma, Aguerd, and Emerson at the making up the back four, as I was saying. Alvarez in the defensive midfield positions, Bowen, Paquetá, James Ward-Prowse and Ben Rama out in the midfield, supporting up Antonio up on his own. So, mate, what were you thinking about that going into the game?
Yeah, I think it was probably close to what I was expecting. Probably the one that I did think possibly was a little bit harsh, a little bit, but it was a close call at the end of the day, was Angelo Ogbonna, because obviously he played in the game against Brighton, and obviously we went to a ground where we've obviously had that Premier League hoodoo since they got into the top flight. We've not managed to beat them until last week. And Angelo Ogbonna was a big part in that as far as I was concerned. And I'm a big believer that unless you've got injuries or suspensions, you should really try and avoid changing a winning team. And I thought it was a little bit harsh on Angelo, but I think it's a close run thing. It pays your money, takes your choice. Ogbonna for the experience, Aguerd for the pace, and the sort of like the more ball playing centre back. But other than that, I think the team sheet was probably as good a team as David Moyes could have been expected to put out. To be fair.
Yeah, no, I agree. As I say, 100% predicted it, but because unfortunately, again, as much as I love Ogbonna, and let's not forget he was a Slaven Bilic signing. He's been with us for that length of time. He is now deemed as a fringe player, which is a real shame. But when because from the romance side of things, but when you're looking to try and push the squad every season better and better, they're going to have to be. Whoa! So the cat hit the camera or something, did it? There you go, ladies and gentlemen. You've had a peripheral view. You have had a peripheral tour of Gates's living room by the looks of it.
It's me dog. It's me dog.
Well, I joke saying did the cat knock it, so I was quite close. But yeah, it's just literally just down to the fact that
little bit of comedic element to it.
Well, we got a nice little panoramic view of your room, mate. So it's all good from that point of view.
Yeah.
Location, and all that, But yeah, no. As I say, it's the age-old argument between changing a winning side, as you're talking about, or putting the strongest side out possible. And Moyes, one change isn't really, it's pretty much the bridge in between the two from that side of things. So. Yeah. Okay. So, Gatesy, for as we were just talking about off camera, before we went live, obviously, we're looking at the way that the format works for the watch-alongs is the fact that I ask everybody to give their thoughts on the first 22 minutes of each half. So, Gatesy, over to you for the first 20 minutes or so.
I'll be honest. I thought that Luton. It was their first home game as a Premier League team ever, because obviously the last time they were in the top flight, Premier League wasn't even in existence. That's how far back we're going, like 30 odd years. I thought the crowd were up for it. I thought that the Luton gave a decent account of themselves. I thought they used the ball reasonably well. But I always just had this feeling that we were capable of just sort of breaking the deadlock at any given moment. I thought Ward-Prowse, I thought Paquetá were using the ball well, moving it round. And to be honest with you, mate, I thought as I was watching it, I just had this feeling it was just a matter of time before we got the breakthrough. So
yeah, I agree with it. Because right from the start, Ross Barkley came very close to getting something on the sheet, as did Ben Rahman. Not a few moments later into that, which we'll come on to in probably discuss in a little while. But yeah, I agree. It was a very, very entertaining game. Yeah, the last time we played Luton in the league was April of '93. So was it? Yeah, it was '93. So that was when it was League One. So you're absolutely right. It's the season before the Premier League started. Regardless of what people have been saying including people on Sky Sports, it was League One. It wasn't what is now the Championship. It was from that point of view. But yeah, it was. I said in the preview that I thought it wasn't going to be the easy game that everybody was expecting it to be, because it's a small stadium. There's only a handful of West Ham players that know what it's like to play in those sort of pitches. A lot of the foreign players would have similar, but they wouldn't have that sort of intimidating sort of atmosphere that it seemed to be. And to be honest, mate, I'm not going to lie, I didn't say it while we did the watch along, but it kind of reminded me of Upton Park. It kind of made me remember those sort of cup game style games that we used to play against lower opposition. That's no disrespect to Luton in any shape or form, but it was. I did say it at the time. During the watch along, I felt it was like a cup game. Did you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that it was, like I say, I think Luton's fans had been waiting an awful long time for. I mean, look, a couple of years ago they were a non-league outfit. Let's have it right. And here they are in the top league in English football. I dare say they have to pinch themselves. And like I say, I think you're right. It's a very tight ground, intimidating atmosphere. I think that there'll be a lot of players, a lot of the foreign players, like you say, that wouldn't have necessarily been used to that sort of atmosphere, sort of like they're used to playing in front of sort of like more spacious grounds, much more sort of friendly environments. Sort of Kenilworth Road's very much a stadium from a bygone era, and a sort of stadium that players don't tend to go to very much. Really tight onto the pitch. What was it? 10, 12,000 something capacity or something like that. So, but as far as sort of like the noise was concerned at the outset from the Luton fans, I thought for the numbers that they had, they made a good volume. They made it sort of like a hostile environment. But I think that we stood up to the challenge, and obviously, as I'm sure you're going to go on to cover momentarily, we obviously eventually sort of kept them a bit quiet.
Yeah, absolutely right. We started to turn on the attack at some point. It wasn't a case of just sitting back and absorbing the pressure like we've been doing for the last few games. It was very much, you could say it was more Moyes ball than we've previously seen, in terms of what we're used to seeing from when he was at Everton. That sort of slowly but surely build up that he was doing, and obviously the stats for the possession throughout the whole game kind of implied that. But at the same point, we'll come on to that a little bit later. But at the same point from there, it was very much we were on the offensive quite right from the start. Both teams were both off on the offensive, but obviously coming into this now that they're talking about the first goal of the game, Lucas Paquetá does a great ball up to Bowen, and you could argue it's a game of headers from one point of view. In actual fact, I think all three. I don't think Anderson's goal wasn't in the second half, but both of our goals in each half were headers, and it's I didn't think Bowen could do that, to be honest with you, because we've kind of seen him do daisy cuts. He's looped it in, but I've never actually scored a decent penalty over the year as well, for that matter. But we've never actually seen him do a header goal. I mean, 1-0 up, 37 minutes in. What was you thinking?
Yeah, the same as you. I can't really remember too many goals, if he's actually scored any goals for us with his head. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any. I mean, it was a great ball from Paquetá. I mean, I know that last season, I think he started slowly, you know, and as the season went on, he really sort of started to sort of acclimatise to the English Premier League. And this season, he started well. We know that there's the thing going on in the background of the, you know, did he do the betting sort of shenanigans and all that? But he's started this season really, really well, and it was a great ball in. Jared Bowen sort of like gets sort of like his head on the ball. I mean, to be honest with you, you can't say anything other than the keeper should have done an awful lot better. That was poor goalkeeping. Yeah. You know, and they really need to sort of, if Luton are going to stay in the Premier League, they need their goalkeeper to be doing better than that with that sort of. I mean, the header, let's be completely honest, it was a powerful enough header, but it was straight at the goalkeeper. Should have done better, but who cares? You know, we got the goal, and that set us on our way 1-0 up.
Absolutely, mate. And I'm not going to lie, with the watch along, I would thought they were going to put that down as an own goal by the goalie. It was that bad of a mistake. But yeah, obviously it was being on target, so that's why it was awarded to him. But yeah, KP, thank you very much, mate, for your comment. I think it was obvious that Luton were going to go all guns blazing at the start of the game, but we always looked in control, even if not playing to the best that we can. Yeah, far off at the assumption of the start of the first half, mate, to be fair. And then yeah, we came pretty close again for, you know, a couple of little things here and there, little decisions. I mean, obviously there's a couple of decisions we need to talk about in the second half, but in terms of the style of play, I thought for the remaining 20 odd minutes, it was quite an evenly balanced game. Both teams trying to go for something. Luton stepped it up a bit, and obviously the romance of being the first team to score at their new, redeveloped home ground. I guess you class it as in the first home game in the Premier League, as well, as we mentioned a few moments ago. Guys, there's 8 people in the chat. Come on, put your comments in the comment section. I know some of you guys see every time I bloody say it, someone buggers off every single time. So there's now 7. Don't change it to 6, please, people, please. But yeah, it's but now we got some people in the chat, so come on, put your thoughts in while we're talking about it, and I'll read them out, because it's a recap, so it's for everybody to talk about. But yeah, so and then what was it? We had I thought we had quite a good few chances, but again, you know, Bowen could have had another one. But yeah, going into half time, mate, being 1-0 up, us being 1-0 up. And then technically top of the league at that point, which we'll come on to a little bit later on, of course. But you know, mathematics don't lie. But yeah, so yeah, what were your thoughts at half time, Phil, about how things were going?
Yeah, I thought we were the team on top, if I'm being honest. I mean, if you look at their output, sort of, Luton obviously didn't have as much of the ball as what we did. I thought this was one of those occasions where we had more possession. I thought we was possibly a little bit less efficient in creating chances with the amount of possession that we had. But you know, I think we more than I believe we deserve to be going in with that slender advantage. But yeah, I mean, probably if you're a Luton supporter, you'd probably be sort of saying, well, West Ham were a little bit lucky, you know, the goalkeeper chucked it in, whatever. But at the end of the day, we got him 1-0 up, and obviously Moyes can get the troops back in, have a little bit of a rejig, sort of take on some fluids, get his message across send them out in the second half to hopefully seal the deal.
What did you think of Ben Rama's performance? I'm not singling anyone out in any shape or form, but what do you think about Ben Rama's performance in the first half?
Wasteful, I think, is the word I'm looking for. I like Benny. Listen, I'm not sort of a Saeed Ben Rama sort of basher by default. I think he's a very good player. I think he's very skillful. He's a very stylistic player, and when he's on his A game, he's absolutely fantastic to watch. Regrettably, I do think that he wasn't quite at that level against Luton, in my opinion. I think it was the sort of like the thing with Benny that he's sometimes guilty of, is just sort of, he chooses the wrong option. He passes when he should shoot. He shoots when he should pass. The usual sort of thing that you sort of level against Benny when he sort of doesn't have one of his stellar games. And I don't think that Friday evening was one of them. But, look, he tried hard.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing I'll never sort of like give Benny any sort of like stick over is he will put a shift in. It's just sometimes it just doesn't come off for him, and so it proved that against Luton.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, the only reason why I'm asking the question is just down to the fact I think out of everybody in the first half, I think he was the weakest out of the lot. And Derek's made quite a good point here. Derek, thank you for your comment, mate. I can see Ben Rama being replaced by Kudus. It's possible. I mean, from doing the research in him, he's predominantly out. He's been out on the right hand wing and as centre forward for Ajax. And there's a possibility he could slip over on the left hand side as well, for that matter. And at some point, I reckon it will happen. I really, really do. I mean, it's just because I think he's right-footed, but it doesn't make any difference. We see wingers on the left that are right-footed, and so it's not really that much of a thing anymore. But yeah, it's a weird one, because this time last year we were genuinely saying Ben Rama was odds on for hammer of the season, regardless of us not being able to pick up that hardly 1 or 2 points. I think it was at best 4 games in.
Yeah.
I know obviously the season started a little bit earlier this last year, so we were about 5 or 6 games in. But we were thinking, no, he was really, really playing out of his skin, and to a degree he still is. But yeah, like we're talking about, his attempt at the goal. And I think, if you remember, we had a very similar shot in the second half as well, for that match, which we'll come on to in a minute. There's no other word to say it, and I hate saying it, but sloppy from in, like you're saying, should be passing when he should be shooting, and shooting when he'd be passing, and he seems to try and like for example in the okay, yeah, let's talk about the second half, because it's rolling around a little bit now here anyway, so we might as well just talk about it. Going into the second half, what were your thoughts up until the, like, where are we, the 67th, 68th minute?
Again, it was one of those games in that phase of it. I think we controlled it for the large majority of it, but probably the one thing that I do remember, there was one close call from memory where the ball sort of like, there was a bit of a mix up between, I think it was Aguirre and Areola, was it not?
Yeah. And
it presented a sort of half chance to Adebayo, who, if you're a sort of a top line Premier League striker, they're your sort of, that's your bread and butter opportunities, when you've got that mix up between your back line and your goalkeeper in sort of like in and around the 6-yard box. That's where you're sort of like your proper sort of top quality number 9s will punish you. Luckily for us, and I say this with no disrespect to young Elijah Adebayo, he's not in that category, and we got away with that. So although I think we were controlling it in the first half of the second half, that was probably the one opportunity where I sort of looked and went, we've got to be careful here. This 1-0 advantage, if we're going to keep coughing up opportunities like that too many more times, then eventually we're going to be made to pay.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100% on that one, fella. I really, really do. The communication is the most important thing out of the lot, which we'll go into in a little while. But Russ says he's an Arsenal fan, so yeah, he's not that much to milk over, mate. But yeah, welcome, good to see you again. KP says, if you could talk about Ben Rama, if you could sort his decision making out, he'd be one of the best players, but he does not seem to have improved in that area since he arrived. Absolutely agree. Corky, thanks for your comment, but it's about Man City. We're talking about Friday. It's part of it. We'll talk about it. Your comment will come up at the end of the stream, mate. Don't worry. But yeah, he makes a very, very good point, but it's not really relevant. It's kind of relevant now, but you'll see why I'm leaving it till the end when you see it. Derek is saying Edson had, in his honest opinion, had a good game, leaving Paquetá and James Ward-Prowse to play forward. Yeah, and that's what we're saying at the start of it, mate. Well, with how much Moyes seems to trust Alvarez to be the only lone defensive midfielder. He's that quality to have. So again, as we were saying, because I'm not sure if you tuned in right at the time, but it was literally 4-1-4-1 formation rather than the standard 4-2-3-1, and I like that. I like the fact that Moyes can slip around with the positional play, because we need players that you can have about 4 or 5 different positions, and which again we'll talk about, as one of the players you were talking about earlier, mate. We'll talk about that towards the end of the stream, of course. But yeah. In the preview I said that we need to keep an eye on Morris. Oh, I thought had a terrific game, and also Adebayo as well. That you can see why he's good in the air, why he's got a bit of pace with him as well. For that matter, you're right. He's not exactly a handful, but I reckon in a year or so, I reckon he will. From what I've seen of what we saw again of him, both of those two on Friday, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we start getting linked with them if they get relegated in the summer transfer window. I'll be very surprised if we're not, because players there with so much potential. But obviously coming into it now, it was a good start. It was a good start to the first half and second half to both teams. And obviously let's talk about the substitutions. Scrap that. Emerson's goal that was ruled off for offside. Now, I'm not 100% sure. I've watched the replay back today, seen the highlights of it. I'm not sure who is actually offside. Is it Antonio, who loves to be offside? I feel like I jinxed it, because when I did this preview with Bill on Thursday night, I said to him, Cornet's very much like Antonio, who loves to get seen offside, and even Antonio doesn't do it anymore. And of course, I fucking jinx it, don't I? And then, so was it Aguerd or Antonio, or was it both that caused it? I'm thinking it's Antonio, because he lays it off to Emerson to put it in the back of the net. But what were your thoughts on that?
I'll be perfectly honest with you, mate. I'd forgotten all about it. I'm not gonna lie. That because it was a sort of like a goal that got chalked off, and from what I remember, it was offside, and I was like, oh, well, no problem, sort of thing.
No lines on the telly, though. Interesting. No lines on the telly to say why it was offside.
No. But I mean, from what I saw, I looked at it straight away, and in my opinion, I looked and went, I think that's the right call. So I wasn't overly sort of concerned by that, to be honest with you, John. To be honest, I kind of put that one out of my head. So I'll be honest with you, who was offside, Antonio or Aguerd? To be honest, I've put it out of my mind.
That's fair enough, mate. To be honest with you, from watching the replay and the highlights, I should say, yeah, I kind of forgot about it as well, to be honest. But again, that could have cemented a very, very good victory. Again, because Emerson's been working really hard ever since he started. We bought him last season. A lot of people have been writing him off, myself included. I called him a Masuaku 2.0 for up and that, which I wasn't the only one with that opinion, fortunately. But that's how he was. And then all of a sudden, that Arsenal home game, bam, he just turned it on. He's been a brilliant defender for us ever since. He's still not perfect in any shape or form. He's a wing back. He's not an actual left back defender properly, but he's getting there, and I really admire him for that. And he's not afraid to make those runs. It was a great run with the ball to try to get the ball in, and then, as I say, with the layoff and everything, it's great attacking movement. This is something that a lot of us seem to forget, like you're saying, because it doesn't go. Not on the scoreboard, therefore kind of slips in the back of the mind to a degree. But yeah, I mean, KP makes a good point. He says the VAR angles look pants. But yeah, one of the reasons
maybe it's because it was at Kenilworth Road, and it's only just been kitted out for VAR, because obviously I've only just got into the Premier League. I don't know. I really don't know, but. As I say, it was at the end of the day. I mean, if we'd have lost points, then I'd have sort of like possibly scrutinised it a bit more. But because we won the game, I just went, whatever.
No, I know. I mean, I took I still take issue with it. Is VAR really that complicated that they had to upgrade the stand? Yeah, it was perfectly fine for the Championship and League One. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit. But as I said in the preview, fair play to Luton for. Redeveloping a stand completely in 12 weeks. How bloody long did it take us to sort out the West Stand when we sold Rio Ferdinand. Months, man. Ridiculous. I mean, obviously 12 weeks is
I
like
think
3
it's a
months.
temporary stand, though, isn't it, John?
Say again?
It's a temporary stand, though, isn't it? I don't think it's a permanent structure. I think it's all scaffolding and all that sort of stuff. So, although they've done well to get it up, I mean, let's have it right. From what I've been led to believe, I don't think it's bricks, mortar, concrete, steel beams and all that. I think a lot of it is scaffolding.
Yeah, no, I agree on from that point of view, mate. But this is the thing. It's just the fact that fair play to them for doing it in the first place. Because they had no idea. Let's not forget that these guys won the playoff final on penalties. They had absolutely no clue at what was going to happen. So fair play to them for doing it that quickly. But yeah, KP saying, I know the centre backs and the goalkeeper will have had played together in Europe, but still a relatively new Premier League partnership. So hopefully we'll be playing week in, week out together. Will improve the communication. 100% agree with you, mate. That's absolutely spot on. Derek says, I like the discipline shown by the player. Reference the offside. Yeah, just playing until the whistle blows. That's I think Derek, that's where you're going with it. I'm not going to lie. I'm not a big fan of the referee in any shape or form. He was on VAR. Paul Tierney was on VAR against Chelsea. Had a blinder with that game. Absolutely perfect. You put him on the camera, changes completely. Now I understand the reason why, for example, that goal was conceded. So that free kick was conceded against Antonio because he was fouled and picked the ball up. But he picked the ball up because he was fouled, and I just really couldn't figure out at the time why. A lot of Paul Tierney. This is the reason. This is the reason why I call Tierney the tyrant, right? Because he's just like he's one of the most. Now this next statement takes a lot of saying, but he's one of the worst referees we've ever seen for a long time, and that's saying something. We've got some really, really bad refs. He can have a really good game. He's very inconsistent, and that's half the problem. I mean, mate, what did you think of him?
What was the line that Jose said? I prefer not to speak. I prefer not to speak. Yeah, no, he's a Premier League ref. I've refereed, obviously not at that level, nowhere near that level. I mean, being a referee, it's a tough gig. But I mean, these guys are paid a lot of money to get things right. They're officiating in a league that has got an awful lot of money that is riding upon it, and they need to be at a certain level. I'm not entirely convinced that he is, but then again, this possibly comes back to the thing about the thing that you've got this situation sort of like, because all the referees that you see in the Premier League come from grassroots football. There's a shortage of referees at the grassroots game, so you've got this sort of like this lack of quality, this pool of quality sort of like is quite lacking. That what the Premier League can eventually choose from. So, do I think he's a particularly good referee? Not really. But it's probably one of these things where it's like, well, what's the alternative? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, we could do the Premier League could do what they did last bloody season and pick out one of the worst Australian referees and bring him over again, like they did with what's his name from the start of this season. But yeah, it was. Yeah, you're right. It is a very, very difficult game, and it when you're a referee, and it doesn't help that the rules keep getting changed every other week. Basically, at the end of the day, what was it? Was it last season? I think the offside rule went through about 3 changes during the season, just to keep fans quiet and pundits quiet as well. For that matter, that's not the way you do things. It really, really isn't.
No.
No. But yeah, okay. So let's go on to talking about the Just before the second goal came in, obviously, Luton went to town with their substitutions. There's no other way of thinking. They in literally the space of 13 minutes, they did all 5 substitutions. And quite rightly so, to a degree. If you're 1-0 down and you're taking, I don't care what the manager says. I watched his post-match interview and he was right for a lot of it, but he was talking through his arse for a lot of things as well. He said that he didn't see a lot from us, and if that's the case, why make 5 substitutions in 14 minutes? You know, it's just like, you know, it's. But yeah, he did. He made the substitutions.
He probably didn't see a lot from us. Probably didn't see an awful lot from his lot either.
Well, you know, I mean, what he took off Chong, which I thought had a fantastic game in the midfield. Very, very talented, very, very talented guy. Nakamba, a very good strike. Almost like a attacking midfielder, I should say. He kept him on. But that was, I think Barkley. Yeah, Barkley was Barkley. Unfortunately, looks like the Chelsea Barkley all over again. He took off Adebayo, as you were mentioning. He wasn't the best, but he was one of their threats at the same point. And then when it comes round to it, just before we get the second goal, he takes off Ben Rama and put Fornals on. And likewise, a few minutes later, takes off Antonio and sticks Ings up front. Now, your opinion on Ings, mate? Where do you stand with him?
What? Not necessarily in terms of the other night, or just more generally.
In general, yeah. I mean, well, both actually. Let's do both. Let's do it for Friday night, and then the more general.
Friday night, I don't think he really did that much. But then, is it fair to judge him on what was it, a 10-minute cameo? Probably not. Even if it is against Luton, with all due respect to them. In terms of what has he offered us since he signed, again, not a lot. I mean, what has he got? 3 goals. 2 of them were against Nottingham Forest, and then he got a goal in Europe, didn't he? I can't remember who that was against. Was that the Ghent game?
Well, maybe, but
he got a goal away.
I remember he set up the goal for Fornals in the semi-final second leg, and was celebrating before he went in the back of the net.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, he's had a great career. I just think that possibly it's just not a good fit for him or the club. And that's very regrettable, because I know there was a lot of people that were quite excited when he walked through the door. And as I say, I mean, look, I'm not gonna sort of lie. You know, those 2 goals he got against Forest were pivotal in our Premier League survival campaign last season. You know, because if he doesn't get those 2 goals, who knows how the rest of that game might have sort of panned out. You know, we might have only sort of got the point, which might have then sort of kept confidence levels quite low for the following games. And then who knows how the season would have panned out after that. Or maybe Forest would have gone on to get a winner, and then all sorts of things could have happened off of the back of that. So they were 2 important goals, and great, thank you very much. But in terms of sort of what has he offered for West Ham, not really an awful lot, if I'm being brutally honest with you. And I don't mean to be sort of unkind to Danny Ings, but I think he would probably say that himself.
I personally, if Paquetá wasn't playing as well as he has been playing, and we didn't bring in Kudus, who's at some point we're going to see playing alongside him, I would have Ings on behind Antonio, because he is blatantly doing what Paul Scholes used to do before he retired. Yeah, he's slowly flowing back. He's running around getting the ball. He's not scoring goals, but he's helping out the midfield. We need players like Ings there, but not to replace a striker. Yeah, if you're making midfield changes, you keep the striker on and have Ings in there to be a second striker sort of thing, or an attacking midfielder, whichever terminology you want to use for it. That's how I personally feel Ings could be used with us. Now, 7 years ago was the perfect time to bring Danny Ings in as a striker. 100% was the right time. Now, like you're saying, you know, that it's coming towards the end of his career. That's the point now where we should have him as a midfield player along in the Paul Scholes sort of role. Before he retired. But you know, again, I was one of the people that was excited to see what Ings can do when we brought him in, because I've been wanting him in for about as long for practically as long as Gio on Hammers Chat has been trying to get him in for those years. I've honestly, it's because the reason why was because in those days when he was doing it, and we were talking about it as a fan base in general, for those that were. That was obviously that was around the time he went to Liverpool. It was at the top of his game. Now he isn't, and we need to use him more in a midfield role, as I keep saying. KP saying awkward with Ings as he seems a top bloke and popular in the team. I think his experience helped at the very end when we could have easily panicked, as you were saying. Yeah. He kept possession, running the clock down. 100% agree, mate. 100% agree.
Yeah, I just think that wasn't what we bought him for, though.
I know.
You know what I mean? It's like we bought him because he was going to be the fox in the box, the poacher. He was going to be a guy that if he played 38 games or thereabouts in the Premier League, he would probably get you sort of like a good 12, 15 goals, no problem at all. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, whether it's just that stylistically, the style of football that Moyes wants to play and the style of football that Danny Ings is capable of delivering and he thrives upon are just sort of, they're diametrically opposed to one another, it seems, or whether it's just that Danny Ings has maybe sort of just over the sort of like the brow of the hill and coming down the other side of it in terms of his career. I don't know. And as I say, he's been a great professional down the years. He's scored lots of goals wherever he's been. Unfortunately, just so far, it hasn't happened as far as scoring goals for us is concerned, regrettably.
Yeah. And Taylor, thank you for coming in, mate. Talking pish here, John. No way could he play midfield. But that's exactly what he's doing. He can't play centre forwards role in any shape or form. So he's helping out, supporting players. Derek says strikers come to die when they join us, and to be fair, he's not wrong. I mean, you look at Hernandez. Brought in for exactly the same thing again under David Moyes. Didn't use him right, and that's what happened. And funnily enough, as I don't know if you've seen, but Scamacca scored a brace on his first start for Atalanta. No surprises there. Different league,
What a
granted,
shock.
completely different league, but. That's the thing. John, good evening, mate. Good to see you. But yeah, it is. That's the frustrating thing on it. But of course, let's move on. Literally a couple of minutes, we get a corner, a fantastic ball in from James Ward-Prowse again, as it always is. All the corners he was taking in the first half were fantastic from either sides, and then bam, straight into Zuma. Probably the easiest header he's ever scored in his life. I think, to be honest with you, he had so much space to get it in the back of the net, and then it was 2-0. So yeah, thoughts on the second goal, mate?
He has made such a difference to our set piece delivery. You just sort of you look at his delivery from corners, from free kicks, and it's almost as sort of when we had Dimitri Payet, where we got a set piece. And you just thought, we're going to sort of really cause them problems here. I mean, basically, since he left, you'd sort of go, we've been fairly inconsistent with the quality of a lot of our set piece delivery. Obviously, we had a little bit of a resurgence a couple of seasons back under Moyes, where our set piece game was critical. But I think if you look back over the last sort of 6-7 years since Dimitri Payet left, we've not really had anyone, in my view, that has had the quality of dead ball delivery since Payet until James Ward-Prowse has walked through the door. He's got 3 assists and a goal now in his 4 Premier League games, right. I believe 3 Premier League games. I mean, and it's not good enough to get him in the England team, which is quite bizarre.
Well, you see, the thing is that I know what you mean. I understand why everyone's hoo-haing about it. 3 games you can't really decide on, bearing in mind he was relegated. He was one of the best players in Southampton, don't get me wrong. But I get why everyone's getting really frustrated with the England call-up, because likewise Bowen as well, for that matter. But at the same point, Southgate said when he took over from Hodgson was the fact that he wanted to bring club-level football into England. Yeah, and everyone was like, yeah, all right, fair enough. Now we are seeing what he's talking about over the last couple of years. He's bringing in players that are playing well for him, not necessarily for club level. And that's where everyone's getting really angry about it.
I get that.
But also at the same point, the squad this is one of the reasons why I'm not doing content about it. The England squad is just for the next few games. He has said that once these qualifiers are over, he's going to rethink that. He's going to relook at it at a bigger picture. Maybe because of some of the criticism. Because at the end of the day, we all know how much of a yes man Gareth Southgate was as a player and now as a manager. But as I say, I get it. But at the same point, looking at the bigger picture, Bowen was crap for most of last season. It was one of the reasons why we were struggling and I absolutely love Bowen. I will criticise somebody when they need to be criticised, and I will praise somebody when they've done something right. So, but yeah, he was, even himself said he was nowhere near to the level that he should have been. So, and likewise, obviously we weren't looking at Southampton all that much last season, but again, a player that was relegated. He had a crack at England a few years ago. Didn't really do enough by the looks of it, especially in that friendly just before the Euros. Didn't really do all that much, bar being a dead ball specialist. That's not really a reason to bring somebody in to England as a result of it. If by the end of the season, Ward-Prowse gets this mass, he's definitely going to get into double digits with assists, 100%. He'll probably get into double digits by the end of December, to be honest with you. The way he's going, and likewise with Bowen, as long as those two keep stepping up and going back to the forms that they were doing last season or the season before last, I should say, then there's absolutely no reason why neither of them will get a call up for the Euros when it comes around in the summer. Derek says focus on West Ham, not England under that manager. Agreed 100%, and that's the added bonus of these guys not going to England, is because yes, they'll get a little bit of an extended run, but they'll have a mini pre-season with the likes of Kudus if he's not being called up. Everybody else, it's just that they'll get to some more. I mean, you look at the training videos that go up, and okay, yeah, they're a bit cliche. They're all hugging and kissing, hugging each other and celebrating goals when they're it's training at the end of the day. But it gives off a great momentum. But at the same point, what we're not going to see is how they interact with each other every day when they're having lunch together, when they're coming in and then they're leaving and having the therapy treatment that some of them will be having and all that sort of stuff. The next couple of weeks are going to be vital for those new signings. That's why Moyes always says that he likes to bring in players to have a pre-season, because it's exactly the same thing. They get used to each other's tactics. They get used to each other's way of playing. Remember when we got Tevez and Mascherano? They played 2 days later in that Europa League game. How bad were we? Because we had no clue how those guys were going to play. None of us, the fan base, none of the players, none of them. Even Carlton Cole on some of the videos that have been going up, the recent Ironcast podcast that he's done. They talked about Palermo, and it was just like that was a bad game for us because we had no idea what was going to happen. And so that's the reason for it. But again, as I say, I understand and I completely sympathise why everyone's up in arms about Bowen not being called up and James Ward-Prowse not being called up. But that's because they weren't all that great last season. They've really got to impress to get a call up to England again. Okay, so yeah, right. Let's talk about the goal that we conceded practically right at the death. Now, over to you.
One word: Wimbledon. It was a Wimbledon-esque goal, wasn't it? There was no, as Sam would put it, tippy-tappy football. It was just very much a route one, straight down the middle. What was it? It was a flick on, wasn't it, by Morris from memory?
Yes, it was. Yeah, there's a little bit of ping pong defending, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that we could have done a little bit better potentially. But the thing is I think that there was someone said this on the radio the other day, and I thought, do you know what? That's possibly an explanation for why this sort of like this style of football, if you will, the route one sort of stuff, can sometimes on occasion be something that pays dividends, is because the modern sort of English Premier League footballer has got so used to sort of everybody playing the tippy-tappy or tiki-taka or whatever you want to call it, short passing sort of movements, that sort of when you get a team that goes a little bit more direct, a lot of the defenders are a little bit like, shit, what do we do here sort of thing, we're not quite sure how to sort of like to defend against this. And I thought it was a poor goal to concede, if I'm being brutally honest. I do look at the goalkeeper, and listen, he had a great game against Brighton, but he didn't even make any attempt for the sort of like the header was that sort of ended up in the back of the net. He just sort of stood there and watched it go past him. I mean, I thought he could have, maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but he didn't really make any sort of movement towards sort of trying to make a stop there or anything like that. I say I'm probably being overly critical, and at the end of the day, we got the 3 points, so who cares? But I did think it was a bit of a disappointing goal. It would have been quite nice to get the clean sheet, a little bit of a better goal difference, but at the end of the day, we saw the game out. We won the game 2-1. And if you'd have said to me, 4 games in, you're going to be finishing the 4th game and you're going to be looking at your team top of the Premier League, I'd have been like, really? Seriously? But that was precisely what happened when the referee's whistle went. It was absolutely sort of dreamland. It's been a good start, and we've obviously got a tough one coming up against some team that did quite well last season, I think. But it's nice. I'm going to enjoy it while it's lasting, John.
Oh, 100%, mate. I mean, we're all taking it in. I mean, this is the thing that football fans don't understand about West Ham. The majority of what we sing is, with the exception of the European Champions song, because it's there. Everything else is it's all tongue in cheek. Like for example, with the West Ham Are Massive song that started coming out, and and everyone tweeting now, we're top of the league, we're top of the league. Yes, we are, but we've obviously finished this weekend. Going down to 4th, still not bad on goal difference with Spurs and Arsenal, and only Man City 2 points above us as well, for that matter. But from my point of view, about the conceding that goal is, again, it's communication. We were talking about this at the start. Yeah, with the spacing. How many bloody times do we have to talk about spacing when we're defending goals? It was literally a case of, don't get me wrong, from a Luton perspective, it was a cracking goal to score. It really, really, really was, which is one of the reasons why I do think that Areola didn't move, because he was just like, there's no way I'm getting to that in any shape or form. But you're right, at the same point, he needs to make that effort. You're absolutely spot on with that side of things. But at the same point, I do genuinely feel, I said it in the preview as well, I feel sorry for Luton, but the reason why I feel sorry for Luton has changed since I did the preview. Because I've watched a couple of their games, but not fully paying attention to it, obviously paying full attention on Friday. I feel sorry for Luton because I see the old West Ham in them. I think they're going to do well. I think they're going to be all right. But I do think it's going to be a really big struggle for them, because I see the old West Ham of... not last season, but we're talking like Allardyce times, right? Where we were having those really, really bad games of just throwing everything at the kitchen sink and then not scoring. And that's what Luton are doing at the moment. They need to find that sort of that cohesive play is the only way that I can really describe it. As a result of it, I do think they are going to get points. They are going to score goals. As long as they can keep the players like Anderson and Morris and Adebayo and Nakamba firing in the way that they were playing on Friday night, they won't be that difficult to play against, but they will be harder than they are currently finding it out. But one last thing we need to talk about, mate, because I know this is a big bone of contention, is James Ward-Prowse. Now, obviously, it wasn't given as handball. It wasn't given as a penalty. It looked like he blew to point at the spot, but he wasn't. It looked like he was actually pointing to Areola. For you, regardless of it being given or not, was that a handball for you?
Again, something I've not really given, if I'm being brutally honest, John, something I've not really sort of analysed that much, because at the end of the day, we won the game, and I'm just like, yeah, fine, move on.
What was it the other way round? If it was a Luton situation, and that wasn't given.
I'll be honest, mate. Because I've put it out of my head, to be perfectly honest with you. I can't even remember sort of how the build up was, what the sort of like the dynamic was. So it's impossible for me to answer.
Fair enough.
I just sort of it was one of those where I know it happened, and I got a vague recollection of it, but I can't sort of picture it in my head. I'll be perfectly honest. I saw the match live. I've not really sort of watched the highlights back or anything like that since, if I'm being completely honest with you. So, and because we won the game, it was just sort of like, okay, we've won the game, we've got the 3 points, we're top of the league, move on. So, to be honest with you, I can't really offer you any insight on that one, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's fair enough, mate. Derek says yes, it was a penalty. If it was the other way round, it's the hypocrisy of it. We would be screaming for it. I said at the time, it's not. because because the handball rule changed slightly, because he's basically jumping up to defend the corner that Luton had. His hands up about here, so it's not in an unnatural position in any shape or form. He's not intentionally making himself big, which is the two rules, and that is the reason why. That's the reason why it wasn't given. And I even said it at the time. It was no way was that handball in any shape or form. But again, because it's all cloudy and everything else, I'm just gonna.
Yeah, this is the thing. I don't think that, so, because obviously there's all this sort of cloudiness and murkiness about, when is handball, not handball. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what's the term natural position would define an unnatural position. Do you know what I mean?
One of the guys in the chat at the time was sorry, I saw a Luton fan on Facebook, I should say, was saying, I said to him, mate, you try and jump up and see where your arms go. That's a natural position.
Yeah.
That jumping like that isn't natural.
No.
So that's the thing. So if you're literally going to elevate yourself as much as you can, so your arms are going to go up at some point, and then they're going to come down. So that's my argument with it, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's changed. But Rookie, Corky, you're absolutely right. We got away with one there. I've seen them given, yeah, but the rules have changed since last season. If you guys want to know a bit more about it, go and watch the video that I did with Mark and Jeff, because I brought it up. There's been quite a few changes, little small ones, but you need to know them nonetheless. Just going back to Danny Ings, I'm guessing you're calling him Virgil because it says AKA Virgil at the end of it. Villa sold Ings because they wanted to play one up two, which he can't do. We play one up front, so it would never be to his star. That's why we were talking about him sitting in the midfield. Derek says it is amazing that we found someone that can take a corner and not hit the first man. Talking about James Ward-Prowse, completely right. Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I absolutely hated Noble being on corners, because he never could do it. I love him, but he could never really do it properly. KP
Consistently
says,
inconsistent at him.
Yeah, exactly right, exactly. KP says, we seem a happier camp this season. There's a lot of encouragement between the players on Friday, 100%. Derek's a little bit critical, said Soufal tucks in too much. Bowen does not come back far enough. Well, Bowen doesn't need to come back too far. He's an attacking player, but I know where he's going with it. I get it. KP says, if it hadn't been given, I would not have been surprised. Sorry, if it had been given, I would not have been surprised. Can only think it was because it went over a few players before it, and he had no idea where the ball was. Exactly. It's an intentional side of it is what we were talking about. And lastly, coming back to KP's comment earlier, Corky's comment earlier, so feeling confident for the Man City game, get Alvarez to mark the ogre, and I think we can hit them on the break. We go into the game with a lot of confidence. Before we get your thoughts on that, mate, just want to do one thing finally. KP's made a very good one earlier. I was there on Friday, and I think it's fair to say the away end was really substandard in terms of the stand. I'm guessing he's remembering too. The stewards were good enough, and they made us feel welcome. That's really, really good to see. Okay, so let's go back to it. So yeah, so would you agree with Corky about Alvarez marking? Well, I'm guessing he means
Haaland.
Haaland, or what's the FIFA poster, or the Haalandino, I think, or the Haalando, the great Haalando. That's how they put him up in the poster. But yeah, he's right. We go into the game with a lot of confidence from fan bases and also from the players as well. But mate, what are your thoughts on City?
Look, we're playing a team that last season did what only one other English team has ever done in the history of football since the inception of the European Cup, and that was to win all three trophies. It's going to be a tough one. I think that possibly most people would view it as almost a free hit, because let's be brutally honest about it, John.
I hate that term. I hate that term.
No, I know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we should go into it trying not to do anything but win. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But it's probably a game that, if truth be told, most people probably wouldn't necessarily have an expectation for us to win. I'm not saying we can't win. There's a difference, the expectation to win will be on Manchester City's shoulders. Yeah. But that brings a pressure, and maybe if we sort of could possibly keep them at bay and sort of get to half time at 0-0, maybe their confidence will start to sort of like crumble a little bit, not hugely. I mean, look, they're a massively capable outfit. You know, you look at their trophy cabinet, you look at the star players they've got on the bench. I mean, bloody hell, you know, the bench alone, it's probably capable of finishing. You know, their sort of like reserve squad would probably sort of like get a European spot if they played sort of like from game 1 to game 38. But no, I mean, look, you know, we go into it in good form with the home team. We should be going into it trying to win. And yeah, I mean, it's a good, probably I think it's as good a time for us to play them when we've got the home game as I can remember for a good long time. So bring it on.
I 100% agree with you. Derek is saying versus Man City, just enjoy some good football. Let's not forget, you're absolutely right, Derek, but let's not forget that beginning of last season, we were this close to getting a point, 1-1, and we ended up losing it. What, 2? Yeah, it was the beginning of last season because Haaland got the 2 goals. He got the penalty and he got the goal from just outside the box. We were this close to getting a point. One thing I love about our games against City is, well, up until relatively recently, our records at home, either at the start of the season or the end of the season, we were pretty much odds on to get a point out of that. You know, even going back as far back as when it was at the last, I think it was the season before. Yeah, it was the season before the last season at the Bowling when I think Wright Phillips was still with them. We got a 1-1 draw on that really grey, murky day. We always do pretty well against City at the start or at the end of the season. We're not at that anymore, but you know, for obvious reasons, it's going to be the 5th game of the season. But I agree with you 100% on that, mate. I want us to win. I want us to win every single game. Do I think we're going to win every single game? No, there are going to be games where we're going to get beaten. Now, obviously, the next two league games are going to be bloody awful because it's Man City at home and then Liverpool away. You know, so we can't as a fan base. Yes, we can go in hoping for something. Of course, that's what we do. It's what fans do. But I don't want players to be looking at people saying, "Oh, it's a free hit," and Moyes going, yeah, you know, just go out and play and enjoy it, which I want them to do, of course, but go out and try and get a point, try and sustain this unbeaten run for as long as we can. And as we were talking about earlier with the international break coming up, was it 80-90% of the side are going to be available for training over the next couple of weeks. Get them absolutely tip-top condition and go out and give Man City a good game. I don't want us to... We're obviously going to be sitting there with crap possession and sitting back and absorbing the pressure as much as we can and hit them on the counter-attack as we've been doing. But I think we need to change things up just a little bit for City to try and get something out of it. Mancunian Hammer says, if anyone's going to know, it's going to be him. Do you know what I mean? City are a very strong side, but they will be undone by Moyes' ball. He reckons 2-0 West Ham. Well, we'll have to wait and see. Mate, don't get me wrong. I would sell my entire shoe collection, and there's quite a few, or all my shirts that are sitting behind there for 2-0. I generally would, but because it would be great to get one over City again, because we haven't done it properly for a long time. The last time was Slaven Bilic in the 16-17 season. So we beat Brighton. Can we beat Man City? Guys, thank you very, very much for your time. And Gatesy, it's been phenomenal to have you on. I've really, really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you have as well.
No, you're very welcome. Anytime, mate.
Perfect. Wonderful, mate. So, guys, for the people that have been watching, thank you very much for all your comments. Thank you for... This is the average view duration has been one of the longest we've had on this channel for a long, long time. It's even shorter than the bloody watch-alongs, for Pete's sake. I don't get it, but great. I'm really glad you guys have been enjoying it. Thank you very, very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and have a great start to the week. I'll be doing a video will be available on Wednesday where I go through my thoughts on all 3 kits for this season. Hashtag they cost too much. Oh, sorry, spoiler alert, I should say. They cost too much. They really do. But yeah, so guys, enjoy the start of your week. Take care, and we'll see you very soon. All the best now.